I would say don't just start filming me without asking me.
Oh my goodness.
If you could film me.
Astaire, come help us again, please. I'm still dealing with foolish.
We can almost taste the tension in the air as we watch Will Smith walk that impossibly slow distance from the wooden bench to the witness stand. He keeps his gaze fixed on the judge, but we notice the tiny tremor in his hand when he's sworn in, the careful inhale he takes before his famous voice fills the hushed courtroom. Cameras aren't allowed inside, yet every reporter in the overflow room swears the same thing. The former Fresh Prince looks nothing like the swaggering superstar who once rapped about summertime and family-friendly fun. Today, under those unforgiving fluorescent lights, he wears the grim expression of a man who has measured the cost of loyalty and found it astronomically high.
Certainly be helpful, in addition to the text message evidence that we had. Sometimes victims don't want to come forward, right? You're talking about a rich and famous individual, and look at what's happened. Perry's lawyer came out and said, this guy's lying. This is a shakedown. This is extortion, right? They always go after the victim. And we don't know if the allegations are true in this case or not, but very few harassment cases are reported or litigated. And often
we lean forward as the clerk finishes the formalities. In the gallery, Tyler Perry sits stone-faced beside his legal team, a billionaire mogul whose empire of wholesome brand messaging now feels like a papier-mâché fortress in a rainstorm. The irony is cinematic. Years ago, Will and Tyler posed together at charity galas, men of faith, pillars of uplift. Now they're separated by counsel tables, subpoenas, and the kind of accusation that blows reputations into confetti. There's something almost Shakespearean about watching these two titans, once brothers in block office gold, locked in a showdown that could send tremors through every studio boardroom in LA and beyond. We hear whispers that Will's affidavit reads like a Hollywood thriller. He claims Tyler turned their friendship into a recruitment pipeline, nudging him to keep an eye out for fresh faces, hopefuls who would do anything for a foot in the door. According to Will's camp, he didn't understand the full game plan until much later, when stories from these newcomers sounded eerily familiar. Promised screen tests morphing into late-night mentoring sessions, scripts exchanged for massages that were never in the script. That's when Will allegedly realized he'd been an unwitting talent scout for something far darker than a sitcom. And once the penny dropped, the only path left was to testify, or risk being buried beneath the same avalanche of allegations swallowing Tyler whole.
Of the timeline that it took for Derek Dixon to come forward with these allegations, if they're true.
Well, that's one of the arguments the defense always makes, right? Is, well, if you were assaulted or harassed, why did you stay? Why didn't you report it right away? What I love as the plaintiff's lawyer is a contemporaneous report. So hopefully they have that. And I understand he's been getting therapy since 2020.
But Tyler's name alone isn't hot enough for the scandal mill. Enter Sean Diddy Combs, the third vertex of a triangle no publicist can spin. We've all seen the headlines, a federal indictment dripping with words prosecutors usually reserve for international cartels. Intimate trafficking, forced labor, interstate transport of paid companions, phrases that make studio executives reach for their crisis management binders. Now, Will is hinting that Tyler tapped into Diddy's infamous party circuit, syncing their calendars so that promising ingenues floated from a Tyler soundstage in Atlanta straight to a gated mansion in Miami, where white linens and water hit a menu of after-hours experiences nobody wrote down. If the prosecution stitches those threads together, we're looking at a single tapestry of influence, money, and human collateral.
I want to mention one other quick thing. They can't find witness number 3 still. This is apparently an ex-girlfriend of Diddy's who was one of the alleged victims. And prosecution can't find her.
Right, I heard.
Before we digest that, let's rewind to the photos our feeds can't stop recycling. Will in a crisp linen shirt, laughing beside Diddy while a buffet is served off a human table draped in fruit and nothing else. At first glance, it's just another celebrity thumbnail lost in the endless scroll of throwback Instagram accounts. But zoom in and we notice the slightest tension in Will's smile, like someone caught in a joke he's no longer in on. Reports say those Miami soirees weren't casual get-togethers. They were meticulously choreographed spectacles, codenamed freak-offs, stocked with A-listers, influencers, and enough party favors to power a week-long music festival. The attendees signed NDAs as thick as studio contracts. Phones were bagged at the door, and anyone who asked too many questions supposedly found their invitation mysteriously revoked the following season.
My social media presence is my bread and butter, okay? So you can't just use me for social media and not, don't just start I'm standing.
So why was Will there? We're told his official story is networking, maintaining relationships, protecting box office receipts. Yet insiders now claim he played a quieter role, smoothing introductions between Tyler's rising talent and Diddy's legendary guest lists. One source swears Will kept a notebook dubbed The List in hushed corners of Sunset Tower, where he jotted names of performers who seemed both eager and malleable. That same notebook we hear is now sitting in a sealed evidence bag, its pages flagged with colored tabs by investigators who believe it maps a conveyor belt of vulnerable hopefuls. If the rumors hold, Will isn't brandishing those pages out of pure altruism. He's sliding them across the table to shield himself from the legal meteor shower descending on everyone who ever sipped from Diddy's 1,000-bottle stash of baby oil.
Which, again, the judge kind of made this a point, too, talking about, okay, well, if we're going to continue to do sidebars each and every single time that a prospective juror has to talk about a sensitive topic, that could take up a lot of time. But again, the defense and the government both seem pretty confident that they'll still be able to kind of get it going at a quick pace. This isn't unusual to do in these types of high-profile cases. So that was pretty much just the topics about, Ghislaine Maxwell.
We can't ignore the strategic timing. With federal agents raiding storage units and seizing hard drives, Will may understand that the only safe place in this storm is on the witness stand. He's watched Cassie's settlement ripple across social media, seen ex-bodyguards describe drips delivered to hotel suites, read about that single missing witness who vanished just as prosecutors finalized the charge sheet. He knows the narrative is mutating daily, and whoever speaks first often controls the storyline. By offering prosecutors a roadmap, names, dates, quiet payoffs, Will positions himself as the reluctant whistleblower rather than the silent enabler. It's a gambit straight out of a legal thriller. Sacrifice old alliances to salvage your future, even if you end up radioactive in the eyes of every former friend.
Out that they will be adding 2 defense attorneys. We only thought initially it was 1, but one thing that stood out to me when Mark Agnifilo was talking about this was he said that these defense attorneys are in the courtroom right now. I didn't see Mark Garagos in that courtroom, but what I did see is 2 defense attorneys that have been there when Brian Steele came on board, and those 2 defense attorneys were Nicole Westmoreland.
We feel the emotional stakes every time the bailiff calls for order. Here's a man who built a career on lovable charisma, now dangling between hero and opportunist. Fans want to believe their childhood idol saw the light and chose justice. Skeptics insist he's only talking because the house of cards finally pancaked. The truth might be a messy cocktail of both. Either way, he's shattered Hollywood's unspoken rule: never pull back the velvet curtain. And in doing so, he's cracked open a vault of whispers that stretches far beyond one Atlanta soundstage or one Hamptons mansion. Behind the scenes, agents are triaging their clients' exposure. Which selfies from 2014 need scrubbing? Which cameo footage from Diddy's yacht should quietly disappear? Streaming platforms are reevaluating Tyler's multi-picture deals. Marketing departments panic-proof upcoming releases that feature Will's voice cameo. Meanwhile, we hear the FBI has cross-referenced flight manifests, hotel ledgers, and even spa receipts, trying to triangulate which stars flew where on which weekends. It's not paranoia when subpoenas start hitting assistant directors. And it's definitely not paranoia when the hush-hush phone calls start with, "Quick question. Were you ever at a gathering where the buffet was arranged on a human platter?"
As far as the plea offer that came up in the last hearing, where the government said we did offer him a deal or an offer, I should say, and that he rejected it. And now it's official, and he said it to the court as well, too. He stood up, said that he consulted with this about his attorneys, and it seems like they're planning, or not even seems like they are, they're rolling the dice by going to...
All of this brings us to the most tantalizing strand of hearsay yet, the so-called secret pact. Multiple insiders swear that years ago, Will, Tyler, and Diddy made a gentleman's agreement, an oath of mutual protection forged in whispered conversations aboard a private jet somewhere between Cannes and Nassau. The alleged terms? If any one of them faced public allegations of misconduct, the others would rally resources, PR muscle, and hush money to neutralize the threat. In a town where image is currency, this was the ultimate insurance policy. But with Diddy now wearing prison jumpsuits instead of white party linens, and Tyler embroiled in a $260 million lawsuit, that pact looks less like a shield and more like an Exhibit A. By stepping into the witness chair, Will isn't just breaking it, he's detonating it, scattering fragments of that silent promise across every entertainment desk in Beverly Hills.
Tony Rock was my man. This is probably irreparable.
We can't say whether he's brave or calculating, noble or cornered. We simply know that when he finally begins to speak, every word will reverberate through red carpet culture like feedback from a blown speaker. And somewhere in the shadows, maybe in a holding cell in Brooklyn, maybe pacing a studio lot in Atlanta, 2 former friends are listening, waiting to hear which secrets will unload first and how much of their carefully crafted empires will crumble the moment he finishes his sworn testimony.
Bars, you would think possibly, you know, it's the federal government building a case against you. Maybe you would go for the lesser offer, but again, that would be having to admit that he had did something wrong. And the defense has always maintained that he is innocent, he has done nothing wrong, that this is just, These are just ex-girlfriends that are mad at, like, just all these types of things that the defenses are.
We slip from the courthouse drama into the spotless sound stages of TP Studios, where the floor wax still gleams and the executive golf carts whisper past rows of fake White House facades. That veneer of family-friendly hustle, the never-ending parade of faith-based taglines, has everyone forgetting what lurks in the unmarked trailers parked just out of frame. According to Derek Dixon's lawsuit, those trailers are where scripts morph into survival manuals, where a young actor who thought he'd landed the role of a lifetime suddenly finds the exit locked and the lights lowered. Dixon claims invitations to run lines turned into mandatory midnight rehearsals. Text messages morphed into unrelenting flattery, and the promise of a recurring paycheck depended on whether he could laugh off lingering hands and invasive questions. We picture the claustrophobic silence of that moment, the actor alone with a billionaire who writes every scene, signs every check, and decides which character mysteriously disappears next season. We lean in as Dixon's filings spell out how quickly admiration can become a gilded cage. First came the friendly pep talks. You've got the look. You've got the hustle. Then the late-night FaceTime calls, peppered with compliments that were really checkpoints. Screenshots included in the complaint show what reads like relationship therapy, disguised as motivational coaching, building up gratitude until the power imbalance is baked in. And when gratitude wasn't enough, the lawsuit says the tone flipped. One alleged message asked what it would take for the actor to be guiltless about certain favors. The character's future on the series dangled in the balance like a chandelier on frayed cable. When Dixon tried to stall, the lawsuit says TP reminded him that Dale, the part that finally got him recognized at family cookouts, could wind up in a single car crash before the next table read. That's when the actor realized he was no longer auditioning for a role, he was auditioning for permission to keep his dignity.
As soon as the tweet was posted online, fans were shocked and confused at Ribeiro's refusal of Tyler Perry's role, making folks wonder if there's any animosity between the two.
We can almost hear the air hiss out of the Hollywood image balloon. Here is the mogul who built a billion-dollar brand on redemption storylines and church pew finales, yet allegations now claim the same man used scripture quotes to blur boundaries and hush complaints. Through his attorney, he fired back that the suit is nothing more than setting up a scam and added Tyler will not be shaken down and we are confident these fabricated claims of harassment will fail. We note the wording, shaken down, fabricated. It's the very language publicists use when they want fans to imagine a single opportunist, rather than a pattern of whispered fear running through an entire writer's room. The problem for Team Tyler is that Dixon's narrative aligns with murmurs we've heard for years. Quiet statements from PAs who quit the lot, emails that vanished during contract negotiations, the sudden hush whenever a reporter asked why the same set medic kept a suitcase of first aid supplies nowhere near the stunt rig. We widen the lens and see how these tactics scale. If one actor can be steered by a carrot and stick threat to his fictional character, imagine a dozen hopefuls flown in from casting calls across 3 cities and sequestered in company housing. Imagine the whispered promise of a producer credit on a pilot that will never air, leveraged as an unspoken ransom to secure silence. Some accusers say they were offered consulting deals that looked generous, until the fine print revealed the rate dropped to near zero if they ever spoke to the press. We've heard about confidentiality riders tucked into standard release forms, about non-union gigs dangled like flotation devices to freelancers drowning in rent, and looming over it all, the knowledge that the man in the director's chair can write his own version of reality faster than any blogger can publish a leak.
Yeah, no, it definitely felt personal to me as well. And I think it's good to note as well that they have actually worked together in some fashion, because he's directed, and by he, I mean Alfonso has directed. He has 12 directing credits on the former Tyler Perry sitcom Meet the Browns. So I know a lot of people was questioning like, hey, you know, have they worked together before? Do they know each other? So I do think that's good to note. But when I saw the tweet, I definitely thought it was personal from just that man. It's like 2 words can make a lot of difference.
Now we pivot to the real gladiatorial arena, one billionaire builder of wholesome melodramas squaring off against the self-proclaimed architect of raucous nightlife. A year ago, TP and Diddy tried to outbid each other for BET, pushing valuations into the billions and posing for red carpet photos that screamed black excellence. Today, their mutual lawyers are sharpening exhibits that read more like hostage exchange legends. We hear that Diddy's camp privately blames TP for feeding federal investigators a breadcrumb trail about enterprise-wide hush payments, while TP's advisors whisper that Diddy's seized hard drives contain guest lists linking back to Atlanta guest cottages paid for by TP Productions. 2 magnates, 2 reputations, 1 fuse already burning. Each believes the other is leaking. Each plans to prove the other masterminded a ring of intimacy trafficking larger than anything seen since the movie producer downfall that rocked Hollywood a decade ago. We stand in the blast radius created by clashing egos. Diddy's sprawling roster of nightclubs, liquor brands, and fashion capsules once gave him shelter in the chaos, and Entourage could always absorb the blame. TP, by contrast, has a campus so big it required its own highway exit. That fortified space now looks like a gilded castle under siege, with independent documentarians circling like siege engines. The three-part expose Maxine's monster is already teasing drone shots of former cast members pointing at concealed doors and panic rooms. Federal agents have quietly requested raw footage. Meanwhile, Diddy's white party archives, once pure social media gold, are now digital evidence lockers, stamped with chain of custody tags. Somewhere in a high-rise server farm, a forensics team is mapping overlapping GPS pings, a jet departing MIA, a studio perimeter badge swipe in ATL, and Will Smith's production company phone pinging both locations within 48 hours.
The response left fans surprised, but they seem to forget that the two have worked together before. Ribeiro had directed 12 episodes of Perry's Meet the Browns, but things took a turn when an actor claimed that he was forced to play a role or he was at risk of losing his job. It was also one of the episodes that Ribeiro had directed.
We remember that Will was supposed to be the safe pair of hands, the reassuring grin in interviews, the one celebrity both soccer moms and sneakerheads could trust. Yet, the deeper we dig, the clearer it becomes that his real value to these titans was as human veneer. Will could broker meetings without raising suspicion, a lunch in Burbank framed as a brainstorming session for family comedies, a yacht weekend described as a philanthropy summit, when guest list chatter turned ominous, when new faces suddenly disappeared from credits after a single season. Will's presence in photos functioned like a security blanket, persuading talent that everything was above board. Now, the rumor mill insists he's flipped because his own brand consultants threatened to walk. They allegedly ran crisis mapping software and informed him that taking a plea or maintaining silence would erase 30 years of awards, endorsements, and inspirational memes in under a week.
Today, in a New York federal courtroom, Sean Diddy Combs told the judge he was, quote, a little nervous. The rap mogul's criminal trial began this morning. He is trafficking, racketeering, and more.
The so-called secret pact, sketched on cocktail napkins after a private dinner in the Bahamas, was meant to guarantee nobody would ever testify against the others. All three reportedly agreed to fund a joint legal war chest, to purchase unfavorable evidence, to bankroll relocation packages for disgruntled partners, but a pact is only as strong as the first man who reaches for the eject button. Once Diddy realized tapes could place him in jurisdictions that do not play around with racketeering statutes, sources claim he pressed for emergency payouts to multiple former party planners. DP allegedly balked, arguing it was fiscally reckless. Will, watching the two argue over millions while investigators hunted for missing witnesses, apparently concluded that loyalty had become a liability. And just like that, a brotherhood forged in fast money and faster favors splintered into three rival fortresses braced for mutually assured destruction.
Two women who said that they had been abused, saying it happened decades ago, and they thought that they could look at the evidence in this case, which is about assault, and view it fair and unbiased based on what comes into the courtroom. And one woman who is proceeding said she was arrested when she was 16 for shoplifting at Harry Potter's World at Universal Studios. The judge asked her what she stole. She said it was...
The fallout is rippling across the industry faster than a Sunday morning box office report. Streaming executives who once courted TP for 5-picture deals are thawing those conversations, citing reassessment of brand alignment. Sponsors that shelled out 8-figure sums for Diddy's televised events are quietly scrubbing ad copy from their archives. We've heard that at least 2 major fashion magazines yanked unpublished cover shoots because the glare bouncing off the scandal could melt a print run before it even ships. And in writers' rooms from Culver City to Vancouver, entire seasons are being rewritten to remove winking references to any of the trio, just in case next week's headlines turn last month's cameo into mortifying baggage. Yet the avalanche hasn't peaked. The documentary team behind Maxine's monster reportedly has 5 more on-camera confessions still under non-disclosure lock. Once the first episode airs, those agreements dissolve. One source says producers possess a handwritten schedule detailing which days intimate auditions allegedly occurred on TP's lot, complete with vehicle plate numbers provided by security logs. Another claims a private investigator dossier lists every A-list guest who attended at least 3 of Diddy's themed brunches, where white linen napkins weren't the only things carefully folded. If even half of this material becomes public, depositions will bloom across the calendar like pop-ups after a spring rain.
Absolutely not surprising, because they want to get to a fair and impartial jury, and someone who has already formed an opinion, for example, is not going to be someone that the defense is going to want to move forward with, because you are supposed to listen to what the judge says in the 4 corners of the room.
Behind closed doors, investigators are stitching accusations into a single narrative that could justify RICO charges wider than anything entertainment entertainment has ever faced. A dedicated task force, part street crime veterans, part cyber specialists, is now cross-referencing flight manifests with residual payments, matching corporate credit card swipes against luxurious spa invoices, and flagging every instance where a background performer was promoted to recurring status after an unexplained weekend in Miami. We hear whispers that tax return subpoenas are on the horizon. Shell companies formed to fund wellness retreats might soon be reclassified as facilitators of non-consensual encounters. If prosecutors decide these enterprises operated as an organized conspiracy, prison isn't the only worry. Complete asset forfeiture could be on the menu. As the circle tightens, Will's team reportedly holds nightly conference calls in 3 time zones. One consultant describes his state of mind as rock climbing in a hailstorm, one bad grip away from the long fall. He's weighing whether to dump the remaining contents of his fabled notebook before someone else leaks excerpts out of context. He's watching social media tally every old photo like it's a courtroom exhibit. He's analyzing whether public sympathy still exists for a star who once slapped a comedian on live television, yet later cried on stage about healing. And while he calculates, TP and Diddy are said to be drafting counter affidavits aimed squarely at him, framing him as the architect of the recruitment network they only tolerated to keep projects financed. It's a legal chessboard where every piece is coded in C4.
Because we now know who all the prosecutors will be on Diddy's trial. They're all women. They have assembled a team of female prosecutors, and that is definitely not by accident.
We peer behind the closed curtains of his Calabasas compound and picture the restless pacing that reportedly starts before sunrise. We imagine him replaying old red carpet footage in his head, measuring every handshake, wondering which smile hides a grievance and which selfie might now look like evidence. Insiders say the meditation app on his phone logs 6 sessions a day, but its calming tones can't drown out the memory of soundstage corridors where whispers followed him like a cold draft. We hear that on more than one night he has taken solitary drives up Mulholland, windows down, hoping the city lights below will remind him of simpler victories. The chart-topping summer anthem, the first sitcom renewal, the standing ovation for a blockbuster premiere. Yet each flicker on the valley floor also brings a darker thought. Every shimmering light could belong to someone now lining up to testify. Someone who cracked a joke at those infamous parties and never realized the punchline would be subpoenaed.
U.S. attorney, what you want you want the best attorneys you can have in there, and it really, I know you want to, like we said, appearances matter, but you want to win this case, and you need, like you said, it's harder for them.
We're told he keeps separate journals now. One records legal strategy bullet points, the other captures dreams that jolt him awake. Those entries reportedly spill out in half-legible scrawl, corridors that stretch forever, phone flashes that blind him, the roar of a crowd flipping to a hush when court sketches appear on giant screens. Friends say he tears out each page and feeds it to a small fire pit before dawn, convinced that ink itself can leak. We note how the paranoia manifests physically. Security teams rotate hourly, code words change daily, and every package is x-rayed twice. Even casual coffee meetings are stress-tested. Assistants must prove no guest arrives with a hidden mic. Tech experts swept his home studio and allegedly found nothing, yet he still speaks in code, convinced an old smart speaker might betray him. We consider the familial fallout. Sources whisper that family dinners feel like scripted table reads, each relative assigned talking points to avoid legal landmines. We picture the awkward silence when a streaming service trailer featuring one of TP's sitcoms pops up on the living room screen, and someone lunges for the remote before the first laugh track. The walls may display awards, but conversation walks on eggshells.
What his team is trying to do is get the public to assume that the government is leaking some of this negative information about him, like that Cassie video. But the reality is, he's got a lot of enemies.
We've learned that a therapist specializing in trauma bond recovery has been flown in under a non-disclosure agreement. The sessions reportedly probe a single theme: complicity fatigue. Each time Will recalls a memory that used to feel harmless, the counselor asks what signals he missed and why. Progress charts hang on a hidden corkboard. Green pins for moments of clarity, red pins for flashbacks that lead to tremors. We're fascinated by the duality, the public warrior preparing to testify, and the private man studying body language tutorials online so he can spot contempt in the courtroom gallery. He allegedly practices neutral facial expressions in the mirror, rehearsing how to absorb cross-examination without appearing rehearsed. One coach likens him to an actor trapped in an endless dress rehearsal, minus the rap party. We've heard he now avoids mirrors during certain hours because he can't stomach seeing reflections from past premieres, framed movie posters that once symbolized triumph. The guilt clings like stage makeup that won't wash off. Friends claim he considered donating every trophy to charity, but advisors warned it would look performative, so the awards stay boxed in a guest room. Their silence louder then applause.
In her civil lawsuit, Cassie said that she was the victim of abuse, assault, and at the hands of Diddy.
We examine his digital footprint, late-night edits scrub playful captions from old party photos, replacing them with vague motivational lines. Entire albums vanish as if deleting pixels could erase context. One insider says he keeps multiple draft statements on his laptop, versions where he apologizes, versions where he pleads ignorance, even versions where he disappears from public life entirely. None feel right, so they linger in a folder marked maybe. We end this glimpse by realizing the true cost of shifting from ally to accuser. Every door he opens now creaks with uncertainty. He may walk into the courtroom holding a binder of truth, yet he walks out, unsure whether vindication or vilification waits beyond the metal detector. The guilt of past silence, the dread of future headlines, both weigh on the same set of shoulders, and only time will reveal which burden proves heavier. We can practically feel the ground quiver beneath Hollywood Boulevard, a mix of fear and anticipation. Agents are coaching clients on how to answer subpoenas without shredding their reputations. Crisis managers are stockpiling talking point templates, and gossip blogs have pre-written headlines waiting like rockets on a launch pad. Every small detail matters now. A single unscheduled jet flight, a video clip resurfacing from a 2005 afterparty, an email chain referencing baby oil bulk orders. We're staring at a narrative so combustible that even hardened scandal connoisseurs whisper that this could redefine celebrity oversight forever. It's a slow-motion implosion, and we're all rubbernecking, unable to look away.
A U.S. judge has ruled that the rapper and producer Sean Diddy Combs will stand trial on federal trafficking and racketeering charges in May. He'll be held in prison until then. Sean Combs has pleaded not guilty to charges that he used his business empire to transport women and male workers across state lines to take part in recorded performances. If convicted, he could face a life sentence.
So, here we stand at the cliff's edge. Breath caught, hearts racing. Diddy's empire lounges in pre-trial purgatory. TP's studio gates rattle under the weight of fresh civil claims, and Will Smith, our one-time symbol of safe blockbuster escapism, balances on the narrow bridge that connects truth to self-preservation. The walls are closing in, the clock is ticking, and one truth feels impossible to escape. In the land of glittering billboards, every secret eventually rents, a light bulb on the boulevard. The next testimony could ignite fireworks no crisis team can smother. Will the last man standing slip away, or will the collapsing empire of silence drag him into the rubble too? Sound off in the comments, unleash your theories, and brace yourselves, because the next headline might drop before sunrise. Until then, stay curious, stay fearless, and we'll catch you on the other side.